So in last class we were discussing sex-linked gene, but in this class we will discuss a special type of gene which are known as self-sterility genes. So what are the self-sterility genes? Let us understand. And generally these genes are found in plants and in some animals also. These are the genes which cannot fertilize with itself. It means they do not have homozygotes. They can be fertilized with another allele which is not present on that plant. So let us first of all we will introduce these alleles or genes. So self-sterility genes are genes that prevent self-fertilization, or you can say they reduce the fertility in the individual which possesses them. And self-fertility genes are often found in plants but also occurs in some animal species. They involve a complex genetic mechanism which includes say number one S alleles. These are the specific alleles. They can recognize and reject pollens or gametes with the same allele. That's why they cannot fertilize with the same allele. Number two, gametophytic self-incompatibility. The pollen or gametes themselves recognize and reject their self-pollen and self-gametes. And the third one is the sporophytic self-incompatibility. The parental plants, their parental plants recognizes and reject their self-pollen. So these are the three types of self-sterility genes. Now we will study how these genes behave generation after generation. So let us S1, S2 and S3 be alleles of a locus. Now as I have already mentioned, the pollen grain which contains alleles say S1, S2, S3 cannot function on the plant which contain these alleles. There are no homozygous individual in the population because they cannot self-fertilize. A plant with genotype S1 and S2 can be fertilized only with say S3 pollen, and it produce S1, S3, S2, S3 individual in equal number. They cannot produce S1, S1 or S2, S2 individual, right? So suppose that initial population genotypic array may be defined as say X0, S1, S2 plus. So this is my genetic population. You can say here X0, S1, S2, Y0, S1, S3 and Z0, S2, S3. So this is my initial population with the condition that X0 plus Y0 plus Z0 is equal to 1. Means their sum is equal to 1. So where X1, X0, Y0, Z0 is equal to 1. Now X0 is the initial frequency of S1, S2 plants. And these plants can produce what type of offspring? S1, S3 and S2, S3 offspring with equal probability. So the frequency of S1 and S3 and S2 and S3 in the resulting population is half of X0. Similarly, Y0 is the initial frequency of S1, S3 plant. Now S1, S3 plant can produce the genotype say S1, S2 plus S2, S3. So this Y0 frequency is divided among these two in equal proportion. Means half. So these plants can produce say X1, S2, S2, S3 offspring with equal probability say half. So the frequency of S1 and S2 and S2 and S3 in resulting population is half of Y0. And similarly, Z0 is the initial frequency of S2, S3 plants. These plants can produce S1, S2 and S1, S3 offspring with equal probability because our initial population is X0, S1, S2 plus Y0, S1, S3 plus Z0, you can say S2, S3. Now this is my initial. Now these a plant having this genotype cannot fertilized with S1 and S2. It can fertilized only with S3. When it is fertilized with S3, so it can produce S1, S3 plus S2, S3 genotype in next generation and with equal proportions, say half half. So the proportion of resulting population is half of the X0. Similarly, for half of the Y0, you can find out here, and similarly, half of the Z. Once you understand this, the rest of things are very simple. The resulting population is, what is the resulting population? So it is half X0 S1 S3 plus S2 S3 plus half Y0 S1 S2 plus S2 S3 plus half Z0 S1 S2 plus S1 S3. Now I just rearrange it. If you rearrange it, so you will see the S1 S3 and S1 S3, it occurs twice. So they can be clubbed together like this. Half is common in both sides, and since the coefficient of S1 S3 is X0 and coefficient of S1 S3 is Z0, so I just write like that and I put S1 S3 plus. Now S2 S3 is also occurs twice with their coefficient X0 and Y0. So I can take it or write like that. It is X0 plus Y0 S2 S3. Similarly, S1 S2 again occurs twice with their coefficient as Z0 and Y0. So this can be written as plus half Z0 Z0 plus Y0 and their genotype is S1 S2. So you can write like that. It is half Y0 Z0 S1 S2 plus half X0 Z0 S1 S3 plus half X0 Y0 S1 S3. I think this is clear to you. Now, if I substitute, say, if I substitute, say, half Y0 plus Z0 is equal to, say, X1 and half, say, X0 plus Z0, say, Y1 and half, you can say, X0 plus Y0 is equal to, say, Z1. So if I substitute here, I mean to say X1. Here I mean to say y1, here z1. So the resulting population will be x1 s2 y1 z1 like this. So where you can write all these things I have explained. Now if I take, say, from this case, x1 can be written as half of y0 plus z0, right? And we know that x0 plus y0 plus z0 is equal to 1. So what is the value of y0 plus z0? It is 1 minus x0. So x1 can also be written as 1 minus x0. And y1 can be written as 1 minus y0. And z1 can be written as 1 minus z0. And half is of course there. This half is there. So it is half of this is half of this, and this is also half of this. So using this notation, we can generate the recursive relationships. How you can create the recursive relationship? Recursive relationship is generally a relationship between the frequency in nth generation in terms of, say, initial generation. So, in order to create the recursive relationship of self-sterility genes, we use a random variable, say capital X, which can be defined as x plus k. X is the frequency of various genotype, and I just define x as x plus k, and where k is a constant, we choose k in such a way that we get a recursive relationship involving capital X only, right? So how you will do it? So let us take your, I am taking x0 first. So capital X0 can be written as x0 plus k, right? Or you can say, you can find out the value of the small x0 as capital X0 minus k. So we have derived the relation like that. Here something else is coming on. Let us say this is the expression. So how you will get it? X0 can be written as capital X0 minus k. So x1, which is given in terms of capital X, say x1 minus k, and x1 can be written as, from the previous generation you have seen, x1 can be written as minus half of, sorry, this is not minus, this is plus 1 minus x0. So you can write x1 minus k will be equal to half into 1 minus, say, x0, right? Now, what is the value of x0? X0 we have find out as capital X0 minus k, because we want to first create the recursive relationship in terms of capital X. So substitute x minus k in place of x0. So x1 minus k will be equal to half. It is 1 minus x0 plus k. Minus minus becomes plus. So if you simplify it, it becomes half minus x0 by 2 and plus k by 2. And this is x1 minus k. So if I compare the constant on both sides. So in this side I will get k, and in this side I will get 1 by 2 plus k by 2. And if I transpose this k to this side, I will get minus k by 2 is equal to 1 by 2. So it becomes minus 3 by 2k is equal to 1 by 2, or I can find the value of k as minus 1 by 3. So in subsequent you will see this thing also. So x1 minus k, here you will see the same relation you will get here in 2. Now compare or equate the constant on both sides. It means this minus k is compared with half plus half k. So this can be compared like this. And on simplification, you will get k is equal to minus 1 by 3, as I have already explained. Now putting the value of k is equal to minus 1 by 3 in this equation. If you put k is equal to minus 1 by 3, then what will you get? It is very simple. So x1 minus minus plus 1 by 3 is equal to, say, half 1 minus minus again plus 1 by 3. No, sorry, x0 is not there. So it is minus x0 minus 1 by 3. So you can simplify x1 plus half 1 by 3, 1 by 2, 1 minus x0, and on simplifying you will get x1 is equal to minus half of x0. So how you will find out x2? If we go like this, so this is minus half of x7. In next you will see x2 is minus half of x1, and x1 is again minus half of x0. So it becomes minus half square x0, and x3 minus half x2, and it is minus half multiplied by, you just substitute the value of x0. Why we taking this x0? Because the recursive relationship are always the, we try to develop a relationship in such a way that the frequency in nth generation can be expressed as the frequency of initial generation. So this is minus 1 by 2 x0. If we keep going on like this, then ultimately in nth generation xn can be written as minus half into minus half raised to power n by 1 x0, and it becomes minus half raised to power n x0. So this is the recursive relationship. Now question may arise, why we create this recursive relationship in terms of capital X. You can also find out the recursive relationship in small xn. So how? Xn plus k is nothing but, it is minus half raised to power x0 plus k, because the capital Xn is nothing but, it is nothing but, it is xn plus k, and this x0 plus k is nothing but, it is capital X0 is equal to x0 plus k. So I have already developed the xn is equal to minus half raised to power n x0. So just substitute the value of xn and x0, right? So let us see, xn will becomes minus half raised to power n x0. If I simplify this expression here, so what will you get? You just multiply minus half raised to power n x0 then minus half raised to power n into 1 by 3 plus 1 by 3. So this is the recursive relationship in terms of small xn. Clear? So similarly, you can find out the recursive relationship of y and z also. So these are the recursive relationship of xn, yn and zn in terms of x0, y0 and z0. If we take the limit, we will see when your generations are large, then what happens in their gene frequencies. When n is very large, means n tends to infinity. So xn can be written as x infinity. And what happens? Now minus 1 by 2 raised to power infinity, say x0, if I take this. So limit of n tends to infinity xn. So it becomes x infinity and limit of n tends to infinity of say minus 1 by 2 raised to power n x0 minus minus 1 by 2 raised to power n say 1 by 3 and plus 1 by 3. Now minus 1 by 2 raised to power n, it becomes 0 and this term also becomes 0. Say this term also becomes 0 when n tends to infinity. So only term we will left with x infinity will be 1 by 3. Similarly, so it is equal to 1 by 3. Similarly, y infinity is also 1 by 3 and z infinity is also 1 by 3. What does it mean? They stabilizes. The genotypic frequency of S1, S2, S1, S3 and S2, S3 will be 1 by 3 and total genotypic frequency in equilibrium population irrespective of initial population. So I think things are clear. Now let us take an example. Suppose that a mating is random and start with a population, say this. This is my population, half S1, S2, S1, S3 and S2, S3, where S1, S2 and S3 are self-sterility genes, means S1 cannot fertilize with S1. S1, S2 cannot fertilize with S2 and S3 cannot fertilize with S3. So we want to find out what is the proportion of S1, S2 individual in generation 5th, 10th, 100th, also find out their equilibrium. So it will explain each and everything which we have derived so far. So we know that xn, this relationship I have explained to you, it is 1 by 3 into 1 minus half raised to power n plus minus 1 by 2 raised to power n x0. And if I put the value of n is equal to 5, 10, 100, 1000 and so on and so forth, what you will get? First we will put 5. So x5 is equal to 1 by 3 minus 1 minus half raised to power 5 plus minus half raised to power 5, and this is my initial frequency x0. So on simplification you will get minus 1 by 2 raised to power 5 is 32 and it is minus also. So 1 minus 1 by 32 plus minus 1 by 32 x0. So it is further simplified and it will give you say 0.3. Now find out the frequency in 10th generation. So if you find out the frequency in 10th generation, that will also comes out to be equal to 0.3. So if you simplify it, it will give you again 0.33. Similarly, we can see that x50, x100 and x1000, they also approaches to 1 by 3. So thank you very much.